Hello everyone. I just got out of a long meditation with Thoth and I had some thoughts on my mind, and I really wanted to create this video because I have seen so many things in the witchcraft community as of late that I really want to address and just put my own opinions, my own perspective on it. And there's not going to be any timestamps on this video because this is an unscripted video. The entire conversation is going to kind of flow into itself, but I want to talk about solitude, silence, simplicity. I want to talk about quality over quantity. I want to talk about analysis paralysis and a couple other things. So let's discuss why you should simplify your witchcraft or your occult practice. So I think some people have this misconception about my magical practice, and they think that it's way more complicated than it actually is. Looking at my YouTube channel, you can see that I'm a chaos magician, you can see that I'm a witch, and I'm doing all these different things. I'm reading and researching all these different things, and it may appear like I have a very complicated magical practice, but really I don't. And I don't overcomplicate things on purpose. And I've been kind of hoping with me sharing more of my personal practice lately and my personal spells and whatnot that you can kind of see how non-complicated it actually is. But in addition to that, I had some additional revelations in my meditation today that I wanted to share because I see so many things happening within the community that I really want to address. So first I should probably say I love pomp and circumstance, okay? There is absolutely a time and a place for a really beautiful, elaborate, long ritual. I'm not saying to never do those. I myself, a couple times a year, will still do a full, elaborate ritual where it just feels good. In fact, there's a ritual that I do every single year around October to honor my ancestors, and that ritual in itself is a more long, lengthy, more complicated process, but that's something I'm doing once a year. It's not something that I'm doing on a weekly or a monthly basis. So let's start out by talking about solitude, silence, and simplicity when it comes to a witchcraft practice, an occult practice, or just generally a spiritual practice. The main message that I really wanted to drive home with this is to give your prefrontal cortex a break from processing stimuli, and I promise your magical practice would be a lot more effective, a lot more sustainable and regular. Silence and simplicity is so good for the soul. It promotes mindfulness. It helps you get into altered states of consciousness. When you have too much stimuli around you, it can become incredibly overwhelming. And this is something that I've really been reflecting on maybe over the past 5 years of my life, really, just trying to reduce stimuli where possible or when possible. If you think back to our ancestors, even just thinking back to our grandparents, think about how many people they talked to in one day. In their generation, how many people did they talk to when they were at home or when they were at work? It is very, very different than the amount of people that we talk to on a daily basis in our current generation. Because of social media, because of texting, people are available 24/7. You don't really have to write a letter to anyone anymore. You can text them and access that person instantaneously. And so sometimes we will be talking to hundreds of people a day at work, at home, through texting, on social media outlets. There is so much stimuli. There's so many photos and status updates. You walk into a grocery store and it's a complete stimuli overload. The fluorescent lights are beating down on you. There's 50,000 different types of brands for tomato paste when all you want is just tomato paste. There's so many options in our society, and with all these options, we end up finding ourselves in this analysis paralysis where we can't make decisions and we can't stick with our decisions because there are so many other options available. It's overwhelming. We're constantly worrying, did I make the right choice, or how can I make the right choice when there's this brand of tomato paste and this brand of tomato paste? At the end of the day, it's just tomato paste. It doesn't really matter. So giving your prefrontal cortex a break in your brain from processing this constant stimuli that is happening in our modern society is great for a spiritual practice. Because again, silence, simplicity, and solitude are what promotes mindfulness and introspection and the ability to really connect with your guides or connect with your spiritual self. Have you ever sat down to do a mindfulness practice with something that you're eating? And I'm talking about really simplifying things down. Sitting down with either an apple or an orange, something that's really fragrant. I usually like to use an orange for this, but you are sitting down with that orange and you are smelling the zest of the peel. You are slowly peeling that orange. You're letting the juice run down your fingertips. You're placing that orange slice in your mouth. You're savoring it, and you're truly being mindful in that moment with just you and just the orange. It is an incredible experience to just sit and be mindful and make your eating practice a lot more spiritual. Most of us, when we sit down to eat, we're sitting in front of Netflix, we're watching our favorite show, hello, I'm guilty, and we're not even tasting the food that we're eating. Or have you ever been on a silent retreat, a meditation retreat, or maybe just tried being silent for an entire day? I realize this video is more about simplifying your magical practice, and I promise I'll get to that point. We will get there, I promise. Something happens in that silence. Something so sacred and spiritual happens when we become silent and we just listen to the world around us. And people don't realize how hard it is to be silent and to have a simple sacred practice until you actually try to do it and you're sitting there with your own thoughts, just chatter running, and it's hard to silence those thoughts. In a world where we live with constant stimuli, this is something that's so important to our biology and our psychology, is to sit in silence and have this simplistic spiritual practice. I firmly believe that our biology has not caught up to where we are with our society. Technology has evolved so fast, our body cannot keep up. We were not meant to process this much stimuli every single day. So now I kind of want to talk about quality versus quantity. And I really want to talk about this in terms of relationships with spirits, relationships with the tools and ingredients that you're using. There is something to be said when you have a magical practice where every single tool that you have has a specific purpose and you actually use it. There is something so sacred about that. And you could really take the time to develop a deep and meaningful relationship with one tool or one herb, one spirit. You get the point. Oftentimes in the witchcraft community especially, I see people making magical oils or, doing spell work or whatever, and they're just throwing in a ton of ingredients. I mean, they're throwing in herbs all over the place, they're throwing in crystals all over the place, all of which these ingredients, it seems that a lot of people haven't actually taken the time to connect with each one of those individual ingredients. It is so much more powerful when you can connect to the ingredients that are going into your spell work. I would rather have a beginner use one herb, or let's say rose petals. Just work with rose and only rose, and work with that plant spirit for an entire month, really getting to know that plant spirit, using that plant spirit in a bunch of different ways, seeing how that plant spirit actually makes that individual feel. I would rather see beginners using rose petals or whatever their herb or plant of choice is for one whole month in literally everything they're doing just to experiment than to see beginners try to buy these packs of 50 herbs and then trying to just shove all of them into different spell work because they think that's what they're supposed to do. If you don't have a relationship with the plant spirits or just the ingredients that you're using in your spell work, you are missing out so much. And I know it can be really overwhelming for beginners as well because they look at other people's practices, or I've had this comment a couple times where people will look at what's behind me in my videos. I'm at a different angle today, but they'll see all my tools behind me and say, well, that's what I should have. I should have all of these tools at my disposal. I need to have all these books. I need to have all this stuff. Trust me, you will acquire those things with time. You will absolutely, after years of practicing, just randomly collect stuff here and there, and you won't even have to try. Those things will find you. They will literally come to you and find you. But I feel for beginners because they feel like there's all this pressure to have all this stuff, and the stuff is not necessary. In fact, the stuff can be keeping you from deepening your relationship with your spiritual or your witchcraft practice. So I wanted to show you all my wand, and if you've been on this channel for a little while, you've seen this wand many times. I use it for a lot of different things. It's my grounding stick. This is just a stick I found at the river. I was walking along the river one day and I found this stick and I went, you know what? I really like it. I like it. I don't know what tree it belongs to, but it has good energy, and so I'm gonna pick it up and use it. I like how there's a little gripper. I like that I can hold it different ways. I can hold it like a writing utensil as well. I just love this stick. And I took some time to do a little bit of wood carving, and I carved some of my favorite symbols on this stick, and then eventually I'll carve more into it, but it's just kind of like a whenever I want to type of thing. You don't even have to carve symbols into your wand, but having really simplistic tools like this. I've had wands that I've bought on Etsy, let's say, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with buying your tools online, but I've bought these wands that I thought were gorgeous, that were just so beyond elaborate, and they had crystals embedded into the handle of it or whatever. And they were gorgeous, don't get me wrong, but when I tried to connect with that wand, it did absolutely nothing for me. I didn't have any sort of connection to it. This stick that I found at the river randomly one day carries way more energy for me, and it's way more potent in my rituals than anything else I've purchased online. And again, like no shade or no hate to purchasing tools online, because I've definitely done that, and you can definitely find some really beautiful, gorgeous ones that are also effective in your practice. But there's something to be said, again, about simplicity. Walking along the river, finding a stick that has good energy, and taking the time to build a relationship with this stick. I use it when I'm centering and grounding in pretty much every single ritual, and this stick carries a lot of energy for me. So I really think it's important to consider quality over quantity, that it's better to have 5 tools that you are deeply connected to and that you use in a variety of different ways than to have 10 tools where each individual tool does one specific thing for your magical practice, but you don't really use it that often and you don't necessarily have a connection with. My advice is to be really intentional with what you bring into your space. And this kind of goes along with my next point. When we consider decluttering your space also helps you declutter your mind. And so sometimes it's really nice to declutter your space. And I'm actually feeling the purge again about maybe every year or maybe every year and a half or something. I get this urge to just purge everything. If I have not used it in the last 6 months, it's going away. I don't need to hang on to all these different oracle decks or all these different tarot decks that I literally never use. I don't need to hang on to these magical tools that are just sitting in my dresser in the closet that I haven't used for 6 months. Physical clutter is mental clutter. And so I encourage you that if you're a person like me who likes to hoard things, to get into a regular practice of purging and getting rid of things that you're not using in your practice. When you have a clean space, you can have a clear mind. I think I already mentioned this video, the idea of analysis paralysis, but I kind of wanted to double down on that next. I see a lot of people getting so overwhelmed by the amount of possibilities in the witchcraft or the occult communities that they just simply don't do anything at all. They read books and books, but they never actually practice because they're so overwhelmed by all the options of what they could be doing that they can't just sit down and do it. So recently I put out the first episode of my Witch With Me series, which I think is the name that I decided on. Thank you to one of my channel members for suggesting that. But it's where I'm just kind of showing you a really informal look of what my magical practice actually looks like. And there was one day in that first episode where I sat down wanting to do some sort of spell work or something magical, and literally all I did was light a tea light. It was just a tiny little tea light candle. I anointed it with some oil, I lit it up, and then used that as some sort of concentration to meditate with. And then I decided to do some divination with my meditation and whatnot, but that was my spell work. I took some divination oil and I anointed a tea light candle, and then I stared into the flame as I meditated. And then of course, like I said, I did the divination session after that, but spell work doesn't have to be complicated. Your occult rituals don't have to be complicated. You just simply communing with a spirit, or spending time staring into a flame, or even just spending time with one plant spirit, like I mentioned earlier, getting one plant that you want to work with this month and really deep dive into that relationship and see what that plant spirit feels like. Grind up some of the leaves and burn it over a charcoal disc, and then just meditate into the smoke. And that's it. That's a very, very simple way to attempt to connect with that plant spirit. So I want to encourage people to get out of their analysis paralysis, because I understand how that feels when you're so overwhelmed by all the different possibilities. But just create some sort of sacred space for yourself. It can be very simple with just one meditation cushion, and that's it. If you want to set up a little altar with one little tea light on it, maybe an oil or something, that's fantastic. But you definitely don't have to, and you can just sit there on your meditation cushion and do magic in your mind. Or like I said, just light up that tea light and see where the evening takes you. I would rather see someone having a very simplistic magical practice than not practicing magic at all because they're so overwhelmed. So just keep that in mind. Simple practices are better than no practices at all. And that was kind of the thoughts that I had for today. I really just wanted to double down because I get these comments all the time about how complicated and chaotic my magical practice must be. And yeah, I like to switch things up. I like to try new things because it's fun for me and I like newness. But really, like on a daily, weekly, or even a monthly level, it is a very simple practice. Another example that I wanted to give was with deity work. Some people are so elaborate with their deity work, and good for them. That's amazing. If you can keep up, you know, giving offerings every single day to multiple different deities and lighting the candle every day and doing all of those things, good on you. I can't. That's too much maintenance for me. So for me, the way I work with deities, and I'm gonna do a deity work video in hopefully soon because I want to talk about what it has been like working with the horn god versus working with Thoth. But when I'm working with deities, I really use acts of service as an offering to them. So for example, the horn god loves when I work out, when I get my sweat on, when I'm being a warrior, and so all of my workouts are dedicated to the horn god, among other things in the sex magic scene, you know, but you all don't need to know the details of that. And then with Thoth, anytime I'm sitting down to write or to journal or to meditate, that is my act of service to him. So I don't necessarily, I do have altars for them, but it's not like I'm leaving offerings every single day. It's not like I'm lighting a candle and chanting every day. Although when I do rituals with them, sure, that's something I might consider doing, but it's not on a regular basis. And I really try to incorporate things I'm already doing in my daily life into offerings for those gods that I'm working with, or spirits if I'm working with ancestors. The same idea applies. I'm going to try to do things that I think they would like to see me doing. And so that is a very good way to just simplify your practice. So yeah, next time you see a beginner witch who is feeling super overwhelmed, feel free to send them this video. I'm hoping this just, if you need permission, this is me giving you permission. Although nobody needs permission from anyone else, by the way. Don't listen to me. You give yourself permission. But if you need that external permission to just simplify everything and really take it down to basics, then you do that. This is your sign to do that. And clean your room. This is another sign to clean your room and declutter, okay? Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. I'll see you in another video soon.